episode of A Seat at the Table, hosted by yours truly, Karl Singleton. As we all know, here at A Seat at the Table, we pride ourselves on ensuring that we bring individuals with resources or individuals with connections to resources to a seat at the table so that we can ensure that our community needs are married with viable resources. So I could not think of a greater resource, community resource advocate, and someone who's truly committed to serving the masses in lieu of just a chosen few than Mr. Nate Gadsden. And of course, in the absence of Mrs. Gadsden as of right now, but it is a team, it is a tandem. But I had the privilege of getting on Mr. Nate's schedule today. And so he's joining us here in the studio. So, of course, welcome to A Seat at the Table.
Thank you, Brother Karl. Really appreciate the invitation to come and speak with you, man. Really do appreciate it.
Definitely. So, we were talking a bit earlier, off camera, and knowing that Life Esteem as a whole has been around doing quality programming, quality and great engagement, and ensuring that resources are announced to our community and provided to our community for nearly 4 decades. We were talking about, and I initiated it. It burns me up when I hear people say there's nothing to do in the community or nothing's going on. And so, what I thought, not robbery, was to bring you on to talk about some of the great work not only you're doing, but other works that you promote in the community. And so, from the Fatherhood Initiative to making sure the word shop is up and running and engaging, to last but surely not least, Amani, the spiritual and faith-based side of what you do. So the floor is yours.
I appreciate it, man. Well, and you made a comment about my wife being here. She really would have been a better guest because Pat's a creator, and she really has not only vision, but she has a stick-to-itiveness to create something that's viable. And quite frankly, I'll start with Life Esteem, which I'm actually an employee of. My wife is the founder and CEO of Life Esteem, and she's been able to connect with tremendous agencies like the Dauphin County Drug and Alcohol, agency, and so many other groups. But anyhow, they fund programs that are what we call evidence-based programs, and we bring them into the community and have been doing it for years now, thanks to Pat's vision. And the program's always free to the public, and we're getting families to come in. And these families, we have three major programs: Celebrating Families, which is a 16 session program. And I say it that way because we offer it twice a week now. We used to offer it once a week, so it'd be 16 weeks. So we offer it twice a week now, and that means it's 8 weeks long.
Correct.
Evidence-based program. It's geared to drug and alcohol as well as effective parenting. Drug and alcohol, abuse and understanding what it is, and then helping families to overcome it. So it's a great program, and I highly recommend it. And then we do what's called Strengthening Families, which is a parenting program whose basic foundation is effective communication, family meetings and stuff like that. So it's real good, solid, family planning and things like that. That's a 14-week program, so we do it in 7 weeks. We offer it twice a week. And then the third one is called Strong African American Families. This one comes out of, I think, Atlanta, Georgia, and it's a 7-week program. We do it once a week. It's 7 sessions, and it's one of my favorite because it has so many dynamic activities, and then also, it involves the entire family. The only drawback to that particular one, though, is that they want you to have a child between the ages of 9 and 14, which I still don't understand why they put that little caveat in there. And there's some science behind it, I know. But anyhow, we offer all three of these programs, and generally we offer them in Harrisburg, Stilton, and Middletown. And the programs are always like 2 hours long, except the Strong African American Families is pretty much a 2.5 hour to 3 hour program. Each program starts off with a full meal, free of charge, and we always hire a good cook. And I'll say it again, a good cook, and we have a good solid meal, and everyone sits down and eats together, and that kind of thing. Then
What time?
It's usually from 6 to 8. Yeah, 6 to 8 p.m. Now we just finished our sessions, and we'll be starting them again probably in September. She always goes out, Pat does, and recruits, as long as the rest of us, of course. And so if you're interested, and you can bring your entire family, It doesn't have to just be, mom, dad, sister, brother kind of thing. It can be your entire family. Come on down. And as long as we know that you're coming, then we can accommodate, food and all that kind of stuff.
Where are we coming to?
Well, it all depends because
Okay.
we have different sites. We try to
Okay.
move it around. However, this past session, our main site was Living Springs Redeemed Christian Church of God
Okay.
with Pastor Tunde and Pastor Yinka. It's located at 3600 Vartan Way, and that's where our church is located as well. We rent from them, but it's a fantastic building. Have you been there, by the
I
way?
have been to the building. Yeah.
Yeah, you have. Okay,
Yes.
it's a fantastic building, and it's brothers and sisters from the continent.
Mhm,
Okay,
mhm.
by and large, and so anyhow, they have a wonderful space. They are very accommodating to us. We also have them in Stilton with Pastor. Oh, don't mess. I'm gonna mess up here. But anyhow, it's a Mennonite church in
Okay.
Stilton, and they've been very accommodating to us. And then also down in Middletown, I think it's Episcopalian church. So don't get me lying, but anyhow, they do great work. Yeah. So we move it around so that we can reach as many people as we possibly can in those three areas. Um, Again, it's sponsored by Dauphin County Drug and Alcohol Agency, and it does a great job. So don't sleep on those programs, folks. One of the things that's always kind of interesting is it's free. It's the best food that you get is not the physical food, but the
Mm.
spiritual food and the mental food. And so just come out. And by the way, some folks have been court ordered or mandated to come. They'll come with a little attitude, right?
Mhm, mhm.
But then when it's getting ready to end, they don't want to leave. They're like, "You mean that's it?" What?
Mhm.
So the good thing is they can go from one program to the next to the next. So
Right.
yeah. So that's a good thing.
It,
So anyhow,
no, no.
yeah, yeah. So I just again, it's this free program. Listen, give Pat Gaston the call. Life Esteem actually has a number too, but Pat's cell phone, and I'll give you mine as well. It's 717-608-2302, and you'll get directly to the source, and that is Pat Gaston, and she'll be happy to tell you all about them and sign you up
Mhm,
and
mhm.
get you on the way. My number is 717-608-2312. So it's
Mhm.
2302 or 2312, and we'd be more than happy to tell you all about it. So those are good, solid programs that we have. Just that we have many more too, and I'll talk about
Mhm.
those too. But I'll,
Well, no, no, no,
mhm.
no. It's open, and
All right.
so because what we hope to convey is that these are programs that are out here and not
That's
just
right.
upstart programs, but they have a solid foundation,
Mhm.
and most importantly, they are fundable because they're evidence based.
Evidence based, and thank God for the funding and the funding source. And they funded us year and year, year after year. So it's not something that's just going to just go away necessarily. People believe in it. The evidence is there in terms of the effectiveness of it, and so folks take advantage of it. I never forget. I can't call her name right now, but she has this wonderful facility. At least she had years ago. Facility down on Cameron Street, right across from the what is that called? The ice cream thing.
But Dairy Queen.
Dairy Queen.
Oh yes, yes, yes.
I forget her name,
Yeah,
but she had a beauty. So she called me one
Pastor.
day,
Yeah.
uh, uh, like Bishop, Pastor, I forget.
I
Okay, but
forgot.
it is a wonderful lady. And so I go in because she asked me to come down and just to
Mhm,
kind of see it. I had no idea. Oh, she had all these clothes, and a lot of them had the tag still on them. Right?
mhm,
She had food galore that she was
mhm.
giving away, furniture. I mean, it was an incredible. And she said, "And do you know I have a hard time getting people to come and take this stuff."
Wow.
Brand new things, folks. And so when folks say there's nothing happening or there's no one that's out there for the community, that's just wrong.
And that's why
You know,
we have this here at Music Man Multimedia Studios,
absolutely.
to get the word out, to
Mhm.
make sure that our community, again, we're here to fill a void where we understand there's a need in our community and we know that there are viable resources out there.
And I know you know. I know
So,
you've been on the case for years, man, and people don't always like what you have to say, but guess what? But you say it, you tell the truth. And so sometimes we just got to stand up and say it. And then folks, stop always shying away from, we won't even call it controversy. It's just, it's a debate. It's a research. It's looking into things. Folks, they jumped on Dr. King. They didn't even like what he had to say. And this man was talking about nonviolence. He wasn't even talking about beating up nobody.
neither was I now. Wait a minute.
Neither was Brother Carl. But the point is, but we get so invested in arguing about everything, or whatever. And I gotta put my hand up on that one too. Sometimes we just get too self righteous, or we think we know something, but the person's telling you something that you need to hear. And
Right.
if you investigate and find out that it was wrong, okay, cool. But you investigated, you found it was wrong. But what I'm saying to you is, and Brother Carl said this right before we came on the air, that there's so many good things happening. That's why you had this program, that we need to tell the story and then follow up and take advantage of things.
Yeah.
And I mean by taking advantage, participate,
Right.
and then share the information for someone else to can use it.
And one of the things, and we'll touch on it, on the other side is commercial break. But one of the things that we can't state enough is that these resources are out there. They're free, and the only thing that you have to pay is your sweat equity. You have to show up.
That's right.
th- just that whole notion that there's nothing going on when there's a lot going on.
There's a lot going
The goal is, especially when we're dealing with young people,
on.
the goal is for the parents to take the initiative
Yeah.
to ensure that your young people are involved. So as opposed, well, I can't give it just that there.
That's right.
Ensure that your young people are engaged. And as we know, if you build it, they'll come. But we don't need to build a Boys and Girls Club. We have it. We don't need to build a Camp Curtin Y. We have it. We don't need to build a Life Esteem with their voluminous amount of programs. We have it. We don't need to build the neighbor United Methodist Neighborhood Center. We have it. We don't need. So you see,
That's right.
Allison Hill Community Center. We have it. So
Support it.
support it.
That's right.
There you go.
Just support it. And don't go looking for perfection. Go looking for how can I help this to get better if it needs to be better. Okay. So stop looking at everyone that's in leadership position as the enemy, right? Or I got to be able to tell them what to do and all that kind of stuff. But I'm not going to show up to do it now,
Mm-hmm.
as you said. So we just got to get off of that tip and really, start seeing ourselves as part of the solution and not just simply, researchers of the problem and always trying to tell somebody where they're wrong. We got to get out there, like, as you said, sweat equity. That means work, man. Just get out there and work for it. When we do that, we become a better, cohesive community, and our children see it, and then it becomes infectious, and contagious, and they start doing what we do because they're going to do what we do anyhow. And if we complain, they're going to complain,
Right.
right? If we drop out, they're going to drop out. It's just the way it is, folks. So Brother Carl's right on the money. We have to, we have to be role models. We have to understand that we're the first teachers,
That's
right?
right. That's right.
And then we have to get involved. And if it's not perfect, it's probably not going to be perfect. But what we can do is we can make it as good as we can. But we have to just pull together. So
And
yeah,
that's what I always say. You don't have to, in order to be involved in the community, in order to be involved with programming that is out there with regards to your sweat equity, you do not have to have perfect hands. Just show up with clean hands and a work ethic. And so, with that being said, we'll take a commercial break and we'll continue our discussion with Mr. Nathaniel Gadsden, Life Esteem's partner in Life Esteem, on the other side of this commercial. Thank you. All right. Hello and welcome back to A Seat at the Table, hosted by yours truly, Karl Singleton. And of course, we have Dr. Nate Gaston in the place today. So we were talking earlier about the amount of resources in the community, how to get involved. You named and gave out numbers and contact information for programs under Life Esteem, but there's more.
Oh yeah.
And so I wanted to talk about, in particular, when we're dealing with a lot of issues in our community, there's a lot of things going around reentry, the topic and theme of reentry.
Absolutely.
So something that I always highlighted that you and Miss Pat was involved with is that restorative program. So restorative practices. So if you can talk a bit about that and your commitment to that body of work, even before reentry was popular.
It is interesting that Pat and I, back in the day, man, I don't even know, late '80s, early '90s, we worked for the Pennsylvania Prison Society as consultants, and we were going into Camp Hill Prison every Saturday morning for about 3 hours, and working with men doing the fatherhood program, literally in the prisons. And Pat, had like anywhere from 17 to 25 men in the advanced group, and I had 17 to 25 in the so-called, sort of beginners group. It was a high, man. We enjoyed doing it, and so many men that we met in there, we still had contact with years later, and still do with some of the men. And fast forward, we have been working. I work with the program currently, the program for it's about change. It used to be called the Program for Female
I was on
Offenders.
that board. That's why I
Yeah,
was
yeah,
great.
there you
Yeah, I
go.
was
And
on
Pat
that.
used to be on the board as
That's right.
well.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think she
exactly.
was even the president of the board
Yeah.
at one time. And so anyhow, so we've had that connection. I still do. Trina, Trina, I forget your last name, but anyhow, Trina's a wonderful employee there, and she supervises the work that I do. with the men, And so also we have a grant currently working with opioid addictive, people,
Mhm.
and we work with families as well as with the individual. And I will tell you that of all of the employees, and I think she has about six that she hired to do this work, we are certified recovery specialists, and I am a certified family recovery specialist.
Mm.
And Pat actually teaches and certifies folks,
Okay.
through the county to do that. And every last one of them, have returning citizens,
Right.
and just excellent at what they do. So really proud of that. The fact that she was able to give our brothers and sisters who went down, came back up, got it
Mhm.
together, and now they're out there doing good work. And that's current with Life Esteem for that particular grant,
Mhm.
But throughout the years, we've had employees through our family programs,
Mhm.
and some of them have been, folks who have come out,
Mhm.
and I look at a guy like a Keontae Ricks who was wrongly incarcerated,
Mm.
and I don't know if you know Keontae or not.
Well, I met him via that's where I was going to transition
All
to
right,
via
okay,
the father. I tuned in last week.
fantastic, fantastic,
Yeah.
great brother,
Yeah.
man. And then the other brothers on this, Tim Downing,
Mhm.
two just outstanding dudes, man, and they really know their stuff. And these brothers, did real stretches, but they came out, hit the ground running.
Mhm.
Real credit to community, and they had two different pathways. Keontae was falsely accused, had to endure all that nonsense. But he'll tell you, he said, "But I wasn't no angel. I had some stuff
Mhm.
going," as he said on the tape. And then Tim had to say, but these guys are now are tremendous assets to not just Life Esteem, but to anyone they touch, because been there, done that. And
Mhm.
I can tell you, you don't want to go there, And at the
Mm.
same time, I'm here to help you and bring you, through the fire, man. And a lot of people are struggling, not just because of the pandemic, but just because of life.
Yeah.
Domestic violence is still raising its ugly head, and we see that in our family programs all the time.
Mhm.
People coming and running from stuff. Poverty is still really serious in our
Mhm.
community. People don't have, man. And, folks talking about the money that they're given because of the pandemic and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, that's pennies
Right.
compared to what these people need it.
Right.
And when I grew up on welfare, I know exactly what it means and what
Right.
it felt
Right.
like,
Yeah.
and then went to college because of programs like Act 101 and
Hey.
how you did you go, Hey man, thank God for
Shout
those
out to
programs.
Speaker Irving. God
There
rest
you
his
go.
soul.
Hey man, speaking, and he created that program.
Act 101.
Shepherded. That's
Yes.
right. Yeah. And then I became the state director. I don't know if you know that
Oh,
or
I
not.
didn't know that.
For 10 years, I directed that
Okay.
program from the Department of Education. So, man, I just loved that program. And that was one of the best jobs I ever had. Let's put it that
Right.
way.
Right.
And we still work with the Pennsylvania Black Conference on Higher Education.
It raised
There
me.
you
Oh yeah,
go.
that
There you
raised
go.
me. Yeah. Yes.
So, yeah, so those are the things that are out there. And until and when you don't know that they're there, then
Right.
you think, well, nothing's happening. But once you know they're there
Mhm.
and you connect with them, then it's like, hey, and this is something
Mhm.
good happening
Yeah.
here in this community. I got to mention Dorothy, and I'm
No, go.
digressing
Go.
here.
Go.
Dorothy Harris. You remember Dorothy
I read
Harris?
vaguely.
Yeah. Okay. So Dorothy Harris was here years ago. Now she's, oh boy, I think she's down in Georgia too. Her daughter
Okay.
moved there, and she moved
Okay.
there. Dorothy was a PhD candidate out of Temple University. She had a master's in social
Mhm.
work. They gave out major awards to people like the Bill Cosbys of the world and
Uh-huh.
other. Dorothy once received that award. She's right here in Harrisburg, man. And so she was like one of the star alumni of Temple. But
Mhm.
she created a program called Help House, and actually she didn't create it. She developed it after another brother sort of created it.
Mhm.
Didn't know how to make it work.
Mhm.
She So we used to work as Calvin Favors. I don't know if you
Mhm.
remember the Reverend
Mhm.
Calvin
Right.
Favors, myself, Linda Matthews. All of us got together, and Dorothy,
Mhm.
and we became mentors for about 10 men
Mhm.
in this house called Help. So we've been doing this stuff for a long time. This is back again in the '80s, man. And then just fast forward, just kept on going. And one of the other things I'll mention is hats off to Janine Turgeon, Judge
Okay.
Janine Turgeon,
Mhm.
who she brought me into the fold to do parenting coordinating,
Mhm.
and that was mostly something that was done by attorneys,
Mhm.
psychiatrists, this kind of thing. But she saw something in me and said, "I need you to do this." I did that for
A
years.
black man with experience in America.
Well, hey man, come on now. But she also said, but I know you will do something in the community to reach
Right.
those who can't afford. Some of
Right.
these people are charging $300 an hour. I'm like, who can come on
Right.
now?
Yeah.
So I just hats off to her. She brought a lot of clients my way. We made a lot of good headway with a lot of
Mhm.
good people who could have been, on the other side if they weren't careful,
Right.
And so I'm proud of that kind of work. But really, I'll go back to Pat again.
Mhm.
Pat has pretty much introduced me to just about everything that I do, other than the writer's workshop.
Yeah.
She's just been brilliant at that, and she never did it by herself. She hooked up with people like Helen Spence and Lillian Bates, and it's going down the line. So many great people in our community
Right.
who just do the work,
Right.
and they have the vision. So, you know, God bless them. I
Especially
do.
Miss Bates. I think
Oh
she is
man,
like when we hear Miss Helen Spencer name, she does a great
yeah,
body of work as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
But Miss Lillian Bates, I mean, the
Because she,
hand to the plow, the
yeah,
behind the curtain, behind the scenes,
yes,
but very instrumental.
and
Very
not being paid necessarily to do it.
exactly,
She's just doing it because
exactly,
she loves doing it. Now,
exactly.
we do pay her through life esteem kind of
Mhm.
thing when she does something, but she would just show up and just do it, man.
Right. Yeah.
And that's hats off to her.
Uh,
And Helen is the one who's brought everyone together.
mhm,
And
mhm.
though she works for Dauphin County, but it's her spirit, her
Right.
vision,
Agreed.
and her tenacity. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do want to mention again the
Mhm.
opioid program
Okay.
because we have so many people who could benefit from this program, and they just seem to want to shy away from it and everything. So we've been racking our brains how to get more clients, how to and it's all free, folks.
Mhm.
We're not charging anyone a dime, and we know that a lot of people are out there struggling with this
Yeah.
every day.
Mhm.
Especially family members. They don't. They're pulling the hair out. They don't know what to do.
So how do they? So how? So if I'm a family member of someone
Mhm.
struggling
Mhm.
with this crisis, how do I?
Give us a call.
Right.
Give us a call, and we will work with you individually as well as in groups.
Okay.
And in fact, what we're trying to do now is start an AA meeting
Okay.
here on this side because there's some really effective I'm sorry, NA meetings,
Hmm.
Narcotics Anonymous meetings. There's some great meetings out there. Pat and I, because of a family member who is struggling, and, now has a year clean, and she got
Amen.
her coin and
Amen.
had to
Yeah.
make her speech and everything. So we went over to see it. And that was my first time actually going to an NA meeting. I know all about it, but
Right.
never actually been to one.
Mhm.
And we said we got to bring this to this side of the river
Right.
and make it happen. And I know there's some groups out there. I don't know where all the, but we want to have one through Life Esteem,
Right.
and
And
there's
we'll
some other
help
things
promote
too.
that.
Thank you.
We'll definitely help.
Yeah.
We look at it here as when there's great work being done in the community.
Yeah.
It is
Mhm.
something called co-opetition and collaboration.
There you
So not
go.
competition,
That's right.
co-opetition.
I like it.
So we're all doing something
Yeah.
that's benefiting the community because
Mhm.
all of us, one of us can't serve all of us.
That's right.
And
That's
so
right.
there's plenty to go around for everyone. And
Absolutely.
hence the reason why we're here,
Mhm.
to talk about collaborative efforts, talking about what's out there, get to know more. It's not to come and take or to, okay, how can we help you? How can we collaborate?
That's
How
right.
do we get the entire pie instead of fighting for the little
Hmm.
piece or the crumb?
That's right.
And
Mhm.
we are oftentimes, our communities are oftentimes the target,
Mhm.
not the beneficiaries.
That's right.
And so,
Absolutely.
yeah.
No, you hit it right on the head. We have got to collaborate, and we do. That's another thing. There's a lot of collaboration that's actually going on, but people don't know about it, so they, say it's not happening.
Because negativity sells.
There you go.
So
Thank
we
you.
can talk about it on this,
Hmm. Yeah.
platform.
And sometimes people really truly don't know
Mhm,
because they don't know. But I will tell you, having worked 10 years with the United Way,
mhm,
I thank God for that because it was an eye opener for me as well. And that is that in order to receive a grant through United Way, you have to have collaboration.
right.
You have to show, that you've done your research and you have other models out there that you're basing it on, and you collaborate.
Mhm,
And I just look at like across the street here, you have that wonderful Salvation Army.
mhm,
But think about it though, and they're great collaborators in the
mhm,
community. They got so much money. I mean, you say, well,
mhm,
why would they come to the United Way? But what the United Way does is they don't fund an organization. And I want to say this to people so that you'll know what's happening. That is, they fund a program or a part of an organization. So
mhm,
you have to show them something that you're doing. So the fight is always, we'll give you the money, but you have to show us how that money's being spent
mhm.
and also the impact that that money
That's
had.
right, the impact piece.
And we got to make sure that you didn't just use it for willy nilly, any old thing,
That's right.
you know. And so a lot of times, folks, you don't know how to write grants. And I will tell you, one of the best ways of writing a grant is to be extremely specific. Don't think of it just as your organization. Think about what is it that you want to accomplish with the funds that you're requesting. And then also make sure that you have other funding. Don't ask one source to be the sole
Mm,
funder
mm.
of your program or project. You have to have
That's worth
collaboration.
repeating right there.
Oh yeah, yeah. You have to make it, because people say, "Well, are we the only ones giving you money?"
Right.
And if that's the case, they're going to back up. I'm telling you. But if they know that you're out there and you're really doing things, so for example, I don't know the first thing about the Dream. What is it called up on Sixth Street?
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
six in camp.
Six and Camp, I think
No,
it
no.
is, or one of those.
Yes.
Yeah. So white building,
Yep.
right
Right
on
in
the
the
corner,
corner. Yeah, I
and
can't
the
think.
young lady who started that,
Yeah.
she passed away early on. Yeah, she was. I remember her whole family. We were little kids growing up and everything. Then I said, oh, okay, great. And then I said, oh. So I thought it was just going to,
Right.
but someone picked up the mantle. I think it was
Mm.
one of her family members. And then I'm seeing all these people out there serving food, doing different
Mhm.
things, black, white, Hispanic, everybody. I'm like, come on now.
Yeah. Yeah.
They've created something and that no fanfare. I don't see
Right.
anything in the paper about it,
Right.
but it's there,
That means it's
folks.
working.
It's working.
That means it's working.
That's right.
You know.
Someone had a vision and they carried it out and they're making it happen. God bless them.
Amen. So how do we strengthen our communities from the faith based
Yeah.
perspective? 'Cause I know,
Uh,
you know, I enjoy your messages.
I
You
appreciate you,
know,
man.
when
You the only
I
one. No.
tune in, I see Miss Pat falling asleep, but I stay awake. No, 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 no. No. But no,
She-
and it is truly, when I have the opportunity to hear you speak,
appreciate
I appreciate from the what was that? The old what was the old funeral home off of Cumberland Street?
Hoopers.
Hoopers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
From over there. I remember when you
Yeah.
first moved over
Okay.
there,
Yeah.
you moved into there and
Mm,
just participating with you over there and then
yeah.
seeing how you stayed the course, how you take it on the road, how
Had
how
to
the
do it.
two of you take it on the
Mm-hmm.
road. And that's another thing, the beauty of it, seeing the two of you together
Appreciate you.
and still sharpening steel,
Yeah. Appreciate
is
you,
one of those things. So want to
man.
be, of course, truly examples in
Mm-hmm.
the community. So
I gotta say this, and there's a wonderful church there now. And I can't. Is it Harvest something? The name of the church is there. At the old Hoopers
okay.
Funeral Home is. I think it was 1406
Cumberland
Cumberland
Street.
Street,
Yeah,
something like
Cumberland.
that.
Okay.
But the point being, boy, I hated to give up that building. I love that building, man. And and Pat and I actually owned the building, and then we also, of course, had our own house and all that stuff. So it was difficult, and the church was never not able to, to, but it was a wonderful center because we had a lot of people coming and use the building,
Yeah.
right? But I'm glad to see it's in great hands.
Okay.
People really fixed it up the whole bit. So we just had we became a nomad church. Man, thank God for Javon Hollis,
uh-huh.
who gave us refuge at the Boys and Girls Club. We were up at the Camp Curtin Y with brother what's his name,
Harvey.
Harvey. Brother Harvey's up
Okay.
there, and we were up there for a while. So we moved around, right? At the neighbor center. We first started at the neighbor center. Matter of
Mm-hmm.
fact. So anyhow, now thank God we are at 3600 Vartan Way with Living Springs Redeemed Christian Church of God, and it feels like home. You know, now we're not growing in terms of numbers, people coming in, but we're growing in terms of outreach,
That's right.
and that's what it's all about.
That's right.
But I do know that we're called to, to help people mature in their faith walk,
Mhm.
and brother, what's his name, Tundi and Sister Yanka, they are doing something magnificent over there. They got like 1,000 people show up every Sunday, man. I mean, literally. And he has a great message, and they're just pouring into that ministry, doing great things. So he and I talked recently, and he actually has a vision for maybe more urban ministry, and wanted to know if I would be on board. I said, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where my heart is.
Well, hey,
So yeah, so let's see what we can do.
this,
But yeah, man, there's so many different things going on that we can still talk about other
I know.
aspects as well. I do want to mention Brother Dred Perky Scott,
Mhm.
who most people know in this community. He's now retired out of Baltimore, where he did a ministry there for like 20 years. The brother's a brilliant brother, man. He's eccentric as all get out.
Oh
He's
yeah.
his own man.
Yeah.
But and I was hoping it would work, and it's worked. We have to have growing pains together. But also, a lot of people don't know Bill White, and Bill White has been with us since about 1995 or so,
Okay.
and he's just a good, solid brother out of Johnstown, Pennsylvania. Been here for years now, and Bill brings a great message. He always has that homespun thing about it.
Okay.
So the one thing that God has blessed us with is the ability to use mechanisms like this.
Mhm.
So we are on Facebook every Sunday, and we reached a good number of people at times.
Mhm.
I mean, 800 to 1,000. We had 1,600 one
Oh
Sunday.
wow.
And that sounds like a lot, but I mean, I know one brother. He got like 33,000, and in fact, Russell Goodman. I don't know if you know brother
Yeah.
Russell Goodman. And
Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm.
so he had 33,000. I man, how'd you do this? But he's a great preacher. He has a good effective message. So anyhow, that's what it's all about, and we try to lift people up who's doing something.
Mhm.
That's what we do with the Life Esteem Show and everything. So people say, well, how many members do you have? I said, well, how many people are there in the world? Because we're reaching the world now,
There you go. There
I
you
mean,
go.
anyone who wants to tune in with you, hey, you a member now.
That's right.
You listening? Oh, we got you.
That's right.
And
That's
we
right.
don't, we don't push tithes and all that, even though we do ask, and
Right.
but we have such a low overhead. It's not about that. It's not about the building. In fact, I love the t-shirts because of the pandemic now. Uh, what does it say? The building never was the church, or something like that.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
That's
the
right.
building never was the
That's right.
church. It's always been
You
us.
are the church.
Yeah,
We are the
we
church.
are the church.
That's
There
right.
you go. Yeah.
So no, I,
So money's been a real blessing to us, and we're so glad to be able to bring the word. Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
So how does that work? So when you're doing your body of work, in the communities, you have these various facets or silos. A lot of people see them as silos
Mhm.
in terms of you only do the writer workshop or you only do this
Mhm.
or you do that. But you bring them all together. The two of you bring them all together.
Yeah.
And I think that's what, from my perspective, that's what's appealing to me when I
Mhm.
see the two of you.
Thank
So you hit various sectors of
you.
the community and the needs of the community.
Mhm.
And whether or not that's deliberate or not,
Mhm.
I'm saying it's efficient and effective.
Well, I will tell
So
you, it's always been deliberate for me.
okay.
I never understood the whole thing about, well, you got to do this, got to do that. You just do what God gives you the ability to
Mhm,
do,
mhm,
and if you have the interest in doing it, and you really have the interest, because that's the other thing, you can get burned out doing
yeah.
it, and sometimes you can be a, what is it, jack of what is
All
it?
trades
All trades,
and a
a master
master
of
of
none.
none.
Yeah, you can do that too. But what I see is it's just ministry.
Yeah.
So I grew up in the Church of God in Christ. I grew up in a home where we had some issues with my parenting parent, my mom,
Mhm,
she did the best she could. And she was a great mom, but she also had her own addiction, kind of
mhm,
thing. And then dad was a great dad. He just wasn't home. Just
mhm,
wasn't
mhm,
there.
mhm.
And I had to get to know him when I was like 40 something years old, the
Oh,
real
wow.
conversation. So,
Right.
you look at that and you say, okay, how did that affect you? And so you can become an overachiever trying to do too much. But
Mhm.
no, I grew up in a home where God gave me a grandmom that simply, she loved the Lord.
Yeah, my
And she
grandma
was,
prayed for
there you
me.
go, yeah,
There you
pray for me.
go.
But here's what I always
Yeah.
like to say: I did not know until I was a grown man talking to my uncles and my aunts that she could not read and write.
Mm,
My grandma went to church every Sunday. She prayed 7 o'clock. I don't care what night it was. She was upstairs in that bedroom and she was on her knees and no one bothered her. And I just followed the lead of the adults. I said,
mhm,
"Oh man, they really respect it." And so everyone came to talk to her because she spoke with wisdom. But you
mm,
know what? She came out of a hard place where she couldn't go to school, so she
mhm,
had to learn. She was self-taught.
mm.
But when it came down to reading, writing, no, she couldn't do it. But she sure had wisdom, man.
She can communicate
She
though.
communicated and she knew the Lord.
That's right.
And she kept it plain and simple. You know
That's
what
right.
I mean?
That's
Yes,
right.
indeed. So that stuck with me. And then I began to follow Dr. King a lot. I mean, I wasn't a great reader as a kid. I was
Mhm,
always, but for some reason, when all that broke,
mhm,
Ebony Jet was my friend.
mm,
And then anything on the news that had to do with black people, I just started following it like crazy. And I remember thinking, okay. So when I came back to Harrisburg from Westchester State College,
mhm.
and I met Mim Warden, and I just had a vision. Mim Warden was the head
Okay.
of People Place and all that. She
Okay.
founded that,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
And so she was talking one day about something. I said, "Oh, that's interesting." I said, "Well, I'm interested in doing a poetry thing." And she took right to it. She said, "Okay, And so Mim Warden literally took me up under her wings. I ended up being on her board of directors,
Mm,
and she was doing a national grant
mhm,
for NEA, and she said, "I really think this could, be something big." And she wrote it out, and she said, "Oh, I made a typo here." And I looked at it, it was word shop instead of workshop.
mm,
I said, "No, I like that." I said, "Let's keep word shop." She said,
mm,
"Okay." And so when we eventually researched word shop, we found out that there were a lot of word shops, and so we called it the lady at the state. That she said, "Well, why don't you say Nathaniel Gadsden's writer's word shop?" I said, "Hey,
There's not a
okay."
lot of those.
Yeah, people say, "Well, why you put your name?" Because you know what, there was a lot, but we like word shop. We didn't want to give it
Right.
up.
Didn't want to come up.
And I
Yeah.
was with I can't think of her name right now, but anyhow, she was the head of the Council on Arts at the time, and we looked at each other and said, "Yeah, let's do that." So anyhow, we did that, and the rest is history. We've been around since 1977 with the Writers Workshop, man, and we still meet
I
every
was
Friday
4.
night. Now,
I was 4.
yeah, come on now, you got to be kidding me.
I was 4.
So was I.
But hey, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, yeah. We started together. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, really, it was a wonderful thing, man. And we got that grant. We brought in Mary Baraka.
Mm-hmm.
We brought in Sonia Sanchez, E. Ethelbert Miller, um, Gwendolyn Brooks, and she had with her Dudley Randall, who did the Black, no, who was it? Not the Black Scholar magazine. Oh, Negro Digest.
Okay.
He was doing, and
Okay.
he was publishing all the greats at the time.
So
Heck
what's
yeah.
missing? What so you cross some generations and eras, of course. What is missing? What do we think is missing today, but is right here for the taking? If that makes sense.
Yeah, what we're doing right now is so important.
Okay.
So when I was growing up, the black newspaper actually existed. So
Mhm.
when I went to college and discovered, because I went down to Westchester, right outside of Philadelphia, there,
Mhm.
I discovered the Philadelphia Tribune,
Mhm.
black newspaper. I discovered WDAS, black radio station.
Mhm.
Here in Harrisburg, we had Toby Young on a Saturday night,
Yeah.
or I think he came on Friday night and Sunday. And people
Mhm.
say, he said, "Good God" on Friday and
Mhm.
"Good God" on Sunday. And we laugh about that, but he was great. Him and Olin Harris were like
Yes.
our links,
Yeah.
to most stuff that was
I remember
going
my
on here.
grandma playing that on Sunday
There you
morning.
go.
I
Listen,
remember that.
echoes of glory,
It
man.
goes, you
And
got it.
yeah, and when he came on with that piece that always started off, that's just a classic. I've heard it a few times and other things. But anyhow, so I go down to Westchester and I turn and I'm hearing 24/7. Black radio.
Right.
What? And then I'm seeing this black newspaper.
Mhm.
What? So that turned me on, man. And I'm like, okay. And now I'm following things. Before it was just Ebony and Jet, you know.
Mhm.
But then I find out that there's black newspapers all over. The New York Amsterdam News, the Washington, Afro American, goes on down the line, Pittsburgh Courier. So wow,
Mhm.
so that. But think about it. Here it is, 2021. A lot of those papers are
Yeah.
fading, man.
Mhm.
Even the Patriot News and stuff like that is limiting their. So
Mhm.
people were not reading. But even listen, I used to write an article called "Consider This,"
Mm.
and I would send it out every week, and I would send it out to all the black newspapers around the country.
Mhm.
And so I would go downtown real quick, because he had a lot of the
Mhm.
black newspapers there, and see whether or not was. I used to get phone calls from people from California. But, hey, I
But
read
not
your
downtown.
article, da,
Yeah.
da, da, that kind of thing. And then I went down there one day, and the paper was gone. And I said, what happened to the black news? He said, no one was buying them. I said, I bought them every week. What are you talking about? He said, well, you're not the only one. I said, come on now.
A prophet is without honor in his own home.
Ooh. He said, I don't know why people aren't buying them. He said, but it just wasn't profitable for me to keep
Mhm.
getting them.
Mm.
So I remember thinking, that's the problem, man. That we're not reading our own newspapers,
Yeah.
supporting those institutions. So what is missing right now
Mhm.
is our sense of institution building. I just had a conversation. My wife and I were sitting there talking, and I forget who we were talking with. And it was our staff meeting, our Life Esteem staff
Mhm.
meeting. And someone made the comment about ownership.
Mhm.
What do we own in the city of Harrisburg?
Mhm.
What do we actually own, building wise?
Mhm.
Why do other folks have these major, you know, and we got to walk around trying to. If we want to put on a big event, where do we go? We got to go to someplace other than
Mhm.
our own.
Right.
Why can't we own a Zimbo Moss, or
We
something
do
like
own
that?
the Whitaker Center, by the way. We do own the Civil War Museum, by the way. We do.
When you
We
say
don't
as
take
a
advantage
community,
of it.
as a
Yeah.
community,
Oh, you mean
I
individual? I
mean, no, I'm talking
apologize.
about. No, I'm
Yeah.
just saying the black community itself, like
Yeah.
or even an individual.
Mhm.
But I'm making the same point you made. You're
Right.
absolutely right.
Right.
Those are
Those are
facilities,
ours.
no
We pay.
question.
We own these
But
schools.
what we really own? We own church buildings now.
Yeah. Mhm.
Forever we've owned those buildings.
Right.
But when we think about it, oh, we don't have anything. Yes, we do.
Mhm.
For years, and then restaurants, barbershops.
Mhm. Yeah.
Sometimes we don't own the building, but
Right.
we own the business. So the point is that building ownership,
Mhm.
having something that we can say is ours, that we don't
Mhm.
have to go begging somebody for, is extremely important.
Or
And
being.
to have our voice heard.
That's what I'm just gonna say.
Yes. Good,
No, that's what I was gonna
good.
say. Making sure you're not sitting idly by bickering in the side
Yeah.
because you're a taxpayer.
Hmm.
So, and that's why I'm not being facetious when I say we own the Civil War
Absolutely.
Museum that's
Mhm.
underutilized and
Mhm.
pretty much exclusive. We own the Whitaker Center because
Mhm.
tax dollars, county and others, and the bulk of it comes from this area, go into funding that.
Yeah, can I
Our
tell
school
you?
buildings.
Remember the guy? I forget his name. It was something like Kresge, Steve Kresge, something like that. He was down at the Whitaker Center. He was the program manager.
Mm,
And the Writers Workshop, we were one of the first residential companies. So we were
mm,
there for about 5 years, doing all that. Opened up the first night they had the Whitaker open.
mm,
We opened up with a 25-member poetry ensemble
mm,
and did a thing and got a standing ovation for it. I wrote the official poem called Homecoming for the Whitaker Center. And they
mm,
really did that thing up nice for me. I have to give them credit. So a lot of that stuff that, say, okay, well, but that's stuff that our kids need to know because
right,
they always see and they don't see us, right?
right.
And when I used to do an after school program, I say to young people, okay, you think of Strawberry Square, then tell me the black owned businesses in those. Tell me where the black owned businesses are. And they would sit there and scratch their head. They'd have to really think about
Mhm,
that. Tell me what do we own? And they
mhm,
were like, huh. I said, but I don't want you to do this 25 years from now. I
right.
want you to be able to.
and we don't own enough.
We don't own enough.
Um,
No.
and we own Harrisburg University, by the way, as well.
There you go.
So I'll go on and on,
Yeah,
but
yeah, no, but you're right.
so
We have ownership there.
yeah.
And so, and part of it is to know that we have ownership there. But
Hmm.
now, think about this stuff. Right now, as we speak, the York Fair is going on.
Hmm.
It goes on for like what, a week or 10 days or
Right.
something like that. Did you see the lineup at the York Fair year after year after year?
Yeah.
No diversity
Yeah.
whatsoever.
Yeah.
You say the farm show, okay, no diversity whatsoever, but it's the farm show.
Yeah.
You know, it's the farmers coming in, okay. They can still have diversity, right?
Yeah. Agreed.
But you go to York, man. My goodness, I went down there one time to that York Fair thinking, oh, man, I was so bitterly disappointed. Folks who love it, great. I'm not trying to knock it. I'm just simply saying York is full of diversity. How
Mhm.
come you don't display that with the biggest event of the year? You know, that to me is just a travesty. And why aren't the people in York, African American, Hispanic, whatever, that's probably the largest population, why don't you protest that?
Yeah.
You
I don't.
know?
I've always said this is a different culture in York
Oh my
when it
goodness.
comes to from my history and research. It is there's some work being done down
Oh
there,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
but there's been from my experiences
Mhm.
a level of willing submissiveness in that area. Now
That's right.
in Harrisburg, we're not far behind because
Mhm.
we capitulate a lot too,
Sure.
based on the lack of collaboration.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
we, I guess, unwillingly turn things over.
Well, we
But
know,
we,
but let's be honest though. We just celebrated, 100 years, and I said that's not the right word. We just recognized 100 years of
oh,
Black Wall Street being
yeah,
destroyed. But then we're now finding out there were a lot of Black Wall Streets that were
yeah,
destroyed, and not just back in 19,
right,
21. I mean, all throughout, man.
right,
Anytime we try to come together and do
yeah,
something,
mhm,
they try to figure out a way to tear us down.
right,
And so there is a gun shyness,
mhm,
and people say, well, but we got to get over that, and we
yeah,
got to do it in spite of.
right,
But there is a history though that
hmm,
we have to recognize,
that's right.
and it just doesn't happen just in America, folks. This is a worldwide phenomenon.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I speak specifically about white supremacy and systemic racism, and it's
Mhm.
real. It's not taboo.
It's real.
It's not the boogeyman in the corner. It's real. It happens. We have a reoccurring theme on this show in which we talk about living in two Americas.
There you go.
So it is definitely there. And as we begin to wind down, I always talk about the fact that we clearly know
Mhm.
that slaves were not brought to America. Kings, queens, doctors, lawyers,
Mhm.
judges, engineers,
That's right.
etc., were brought here and
And
enslaved.
enslaved. There you go. There you
So
go.
I'll let you have the last word
Well, let me just
as
say
we get
this,
ready to.
man.
Yeah.
I appreciate you having us on. You've been doing great work, and just keep doing what you're doing, man. Because you're a builder, and you keep us on edge by telling the truth. You know what I'm saying? Because if we don't talk about anything, then we're
Yeah.
capitulating. We're cowering down, and we're acting like, well, my corner's okay, so I'm
Yeah.
not going to rock the boat. So we have to talk about these hard things. Folks used to say, "How come life esteem?" I said, "No. What Life Esteem is designed to do is the TV program that is. We still come on, by the way, on Channel 21,
Hmm. Talk
Sunday
about it.
mornings, 6 a.m. Okay. But people have been watching that program for years. We've actually been on literally about 29 years, we calculate now, because we started off with the school district.
Hmm.
And then we went to, what's her name? My sister had us for 1 year. Come on. She has her own TV thing and all that. Been doing it for years. Ah, man, I hate that. Okay, and I'm sorry, sis, because I love you and I know that you really stepped up and you've been doing great things. And her name's gonna hit me. But anyhow, and then Channel 21 picked us up, and so we've been with them for years. And folks, the program is designed to do exactly what Brother Carl is doing. We bring forth people who are about something, doing something. Most folks say when nothing's happened, we say, "Oh, wait a minute now," and then we
You
bring
brought
in,
me on.
"Yeah,
I
yeah,
was
yeah,
yeah,
hey,
yeah,
listen, you've been on."
yeah.
And we try to hit
Yeah.
everybody. It's like you're doing something. Come on and tell people about
Right.
it. And one guy said to us one day, I said, "Well, you and Pat don't say a whole lot." I said, "Because it's not our show. When we bring the people on, it's not their show. We are the hosts. We are the producers. And guess what? If we set to run our mouths, right? And I appreciate you letting me run my mouth.
Oh, hey,
you know,
you.
then what do we do? We take over the show. So I need you to hear this information and know that something good's happening. And do that. But anyhow, um, I'm just gonna leave it there. Give us a call, folks. Again, everything that we do, we try to do for the community. Most times, we don't charge a dime for anything.
Right.
But there is a wonderful program that Pat is. It's a certification program. That's the CRS. certified recovery specialist, and a certified family recovery specialist. And those programs, again, the certifications there, and there's other certifications that are out there. There's a cost to those and a commitment. But once you get it, I mean, people are hiring folks who have these credentials. And
Mhm.
so I'm telling you, you don't want to sleep on that. So again, I'm gonna give the number out one more time:
Mhm.
717-608-2302 or 717-608-2312. You'll get either Pat or myself, and we'd love to, talk with you and give you all the information that you need. And God bless you. Thank you for doing this program. A seat at the table, man. I'm glad to have a seat today.
Hey, well, it's always open. It's an open invitation.
Appreciate
And if there's anything going on that we should know about that you need help with promoting, we are here for you. So this is, ours, as
you.
we
Okay.
say,
Mhm.
and so as long as it's benefiting the masses, not the chosen few,
Absolutely.
alone, we're willing participants,
All
and
right.
it's about collaboration
Okay.
and co-opetition at the same time because ultimately the community benefits.
Yes, amen. That's right.
So
That's what it's all
again,
about.
you have heard from Dr. Nathaniel Gadsden of the White Writer Workshop, Life Esteem, Fatherhood Initiative, you name it. He's a plethora of resources, but the most, I'll say, precious resource he has is the one and only Miss Pat Gaston, who, of course, keeps him in line and continues, I jokingly say that, but truly mean, they are pillars in the community as we watch Steel Sharpen Steel. And I'm just thankful that there's gentlemen like you and women like Miss Pat who think doesn't find it offensive to not pass the torch. Nobody's saying pass the torch, but at least light somebody else's torch.
Oh man,
And you
that's
never saw that as onerous or something that should not have been done. And so I was always thankful, even if I at times when I wasn't as reserved, you never gave up on me,
oh no.
and Miss Pat didn't. So you were always cordial and had words of encouragement. And
Appreciate
so
you,
I
man.
appreciate that. And
Yeah.
again, thank you for taking the time to join us.
Thank you.
And you're always welcome back.
Appreciate you, brother Carl. All right.
All right. And so as we come to the close of this segment, how on the other side of this commercial, we're going to be joined we're going to have a conversation around mental health and our sister, Simone Biles, and the things that have transpired this past week or so. We'll have on with us a renowned psychologist, sports psychologist, as well as a community advocate who is also a licensed therapist. We will have Dr. Taunya Tinsley, as well as Mr. Steve Johnson, on the other side of this commercial. You're here live at a seat at the table, hosted by yours truly, Karl Singleton. We thank our guest, Mr. Nathaniel Gadsden, again for joining us. Wish you well. Any way we can be supportive, we're here. So, with that being said, we'll see you on the other side of these commercials. Thanks for joining us. Hello, 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 and welcome back to A Seat at the Table, hosted by yours truly, Karl Singleton. As we enter into our second segment of the show today, I have the distinct honor and pleasure of having two guests to highlight mental health and, in particular, sports. Right now is what we want to talk about in our with our young people. We have seen the comments, the Facebook, the social media blasts and posts um, regarding Sister Simone Biles. And as Malcolm X says, over and over has said over and over again, and we repeat it, the most unprotected person is the black woman. And so once again, we find ourselves in America with one of our sisters being attacked for merely expressing her strength through highlighting the weakness that she decided to face. And she's being attacked for it. I did a post on social media and other outlets in which I clearly stated um, if she was anyone else aside from a black woman or her skin color being black, I firmly believe that she would be held as a hero for highlighting her mental health and taking some time out for self care at the pinnacle of her career, as opposed to being demonized and attacked. She would also be highlighted for being selfless with regards to allowing someone else that may be in a better position mentally, spiritually, physically to participate and go after the goal. Neither of those things were afforded to this young lady. Not even talking about the trauma that she overcame and continues to overcome daily of her past. So I'm not the subject matter expert. That's just me as a parent, as an advocate. What I'm going to do at this time is actually bring on the subject matter experts. And of course, as we know, we always go ladies before gentlemen. So I'm going to bring up Dr. If she's still, I know we're experiencing some storms. Okay. So Dr. Taunya Tinsley, please.
Hello, good evening. Thank you so much, Karl, for having me on the show this evening.
Thank you for joining us. And I'm going to bring in Mr. Steve Johnson.
Hey, sir, how you doing? Thank you for having me.
Doing well. Thank you to the both of you. And this is a formal introduction between the two of you now. As we're sharing space, you both are so gracious. It could have been two separate shows, but I want to thank both of you for not minding sharing space because the perspectives that I hope to glean from this conversation is both male and female. You ultimately crossing, talking about your service with regards to as a black male in particular and as a black female educated individuals in this field. And I'll just jump right into it. What was your reaction to the way our sister was treated while acknowledging the fact that she was facing some mental health challenges?
Well, for me, my reaction was on one hand, I was shocked. On the other hand, I wasn't shocked. We live in a society where there is mental health stigma and biases. And what we saw in some people's response was coming from that place of the bias and the stigma and lack of education. But on the other hand, we had people that provided trauma informed care, sensitivity, nurturing. And so it just goes to show that we are doing some great work to educate society on mental health issues, especially with the athlete population, but that we also have work to do and continued work to do.
More in part of your background, and I'll just say Dr. T since that's what you put in. Part of
Yes.
your background in particular is working around that sports side, which we'll get into. Uh, Brother Johnson, you do a lot of work, as a licensed therapist with our young people, but you can't just do work with young people because young people are oftentimes, hopefully, connected to the elders. And so, how is it for you dealing with this, especially with the young girls that you and your young ladies that you and your wife engage with throughout your programming?
My first thought when it came up was mental health is real. I think so often we 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 take it for granted and we don't really see how it can be impactful in people's lives. And then when something like this comes to the forefront, you then get to have a better understanding of how it really could be a traumatic experience for a person in their life. And you look at it, she was at the pinnacle, right? So it can happen at any time. It really can manifest itself in somebody's life at any time. There's no exact time on when it comes up, and so being able to cope in a positive manner is difficult. No matter who you are in your education, it can just hit you that fast.
But more specifically with regards to Sister Biles, I mean, we're at a position where let's talk about it. We're talking about the Olympics. I believe this is one of the most racist sports spectacles that you could ever be involved with. First of all, there's a country that really doesn't support you, but wants to continue to benefit from you. And then you go throughout the world professing to love and honor the flag or the country or whatever. So this is a young lady who's dealing with a plethora of things, and then at the end of it all, she still overcomes all of this, starts to basically, she is the greatest not only gymnast but Olympian ever in terms of gold medals. But then they start changing the rules. They start switching the rules midway through. And not only do they do that, they tell her they're doing it to keep competition, to continue to allow her lack of competition to gain ground on her. What is that like, Dr. T? I mean, from that perspective, what do you do if you were engaging, and you're not, but if you were engaging with her or that situation? How do you handle that?
Well, one of the things that I appreciate is that Simone, based on what I have heard from her in interviews and following her over the years, she understands the business side of sports. And in this particular case, as she said at the press conference, although I understand the business side of sports, I'm putting my mental health first. And that's hard for people because we come from a place where it was no pain, no gain. So you got to keep going regardless of the pain, whatever you're facing physically or mentally. And for Simone, she said, you know, from as being a strong competitor, you are really strong when you take time for yourself. And I want to go back to something else that Steve said. And it's really nice to meet you, Steve. And one of the things we have to understand, the statistics that have been reported by the National Institute of Mental Health says 1 in 5 adults, US adults, have a diagnosable mental illness. We all have mental health, may not have a diagnosable mental illness, but we all have mental health. And when we're talking about mental health, being able to cope with the stresses and pressures of life, being able to perform and perform fruitfully in your community. And here's what Simone is saying. Right now, this pressure that I am facing from a multiple of sources is too much on me mentally that it caused me to have a mental block in the middle of my performance that could potentially be catastrophic or cause me to have a serious injury. And Simone was thinking not only about the here and now, but also the future of her life.
And there's no comeback for me. I'm just going to pass that right to you, Brother Johnson.
And I would say that in reference to the cultures, you've seen two different paradigms, right? You've seen a Black culture saying, hey, it's one mistake. You know, she's been doing this. She's been exemplifying just perfection, being a professional throughout this. And it was a hiccup. And you had other cultures saying, well, these are rules and rules are meant to be followed, and you need to throw the book at her. And I think that we really need to take a step back and go, this is a person first. This is a person who is dealing with different barriers and obstacles in our life. And instead of trying to condemn and condone and throw books, we should be trying to help. We should be trying to teach. And not only her, right, but all of us who are dealing with these same type of barriers, who are facing these same type of challenges and struggles, who fall daily, right? It's a constant battle. There's no, all right, I'm gonna be perfect today. That's not going to happen for anybody. You know, she didn't say, today I'm gonna have a breakdown and everything's gonna hit the fan and I'm gonna leave. No, it all came and it just started to manifest herself. And she was like, I can't do it.
Right.
I need to cope the best way I know how.
And that's
and
where
she was doing it just to try to cope, just to try to self-medicate herself so she can go on, right? Because if she doesn't get caught, she's then able to move forward. But she was trying to go, how can I do this? What is the way I can help me? And then everything hit the fan. Then she goes, you know what? I don't even want to be bothered. I just need to take a step back now, right? Because everything is now coming to the forefront. What's hard to do, put yourself under a microscope, have a mistake, and then have the world come and chastise you. Yeah. And then have a minority of our population go, it's going to be okay. So you think about like the numbers, right? The numbers are big. So how about for every 15 insults, there's one compliment.
Right.
And magnify that. And then you go, Steve, you can be great. How? How do I continue to be great when like 75% think I did like the most horrific thing ever?
So why don't we, when we look at, and we're talking about two sisters, you know, that have been highlighted. So Sister Richardson as well as Biles, And of course, again, the reaction for both who are dealing with trauma in their own way is not being respected. And again, I hold it, I hold both of them up on a mantle, but to simply say they have chosen to do what they did to cope with their trauma that people may have known about or may not have known about. However, we need to make sure that we have resources that are readily available, and that well, let's just even go back before resources. We need to make sure that our community is receptive. Our communities are not stigmatizing the fact that, as he said, with 1 in 5, we all have mental health. One in 5 have mental health issues or diagnosed with mental health challenges. And so, knowing that now, and that's something I just had to jump in now. You know, how do we now take on that onus so that our sisters and brothers and all community members are able to adequately express themselves in terms of outreaching for resources? What is it that we need to see more of in our communities?
That's a great question. And I love that you brought in this idea of trauma. And I really believe that we need to come from a trauma informed approach, right? So when we talk about Richardson and Biles, they both have dealt with various types of trauma. Losing a grandparent who raised you, Simone being a sexual assault survivor. So we have to understand that there's one of my favorite books is called The Body Keeps Score. And the body, mind, and spirit are all connected. And so what may happen psychologically or emotionally can be manifested in a person's body. So when somebody is going through something that could trigger the trauma from the past, that it can cause those mental blocks. So I think in terms of Richardson, Naomi Osaka, Biles, and any other athlete who has gone through some trauma, we have to think about the intersectionality of race, gender, sport identity, trauma, if they've experienced trauma. And we have to think about when Simone Biles, she had said there's been different pressures. All of us have experienced a pandemic. None of us have been trained to manage a pandemic. So not only was she dealing with the pandemic, then all of us as brown people and Black and brown people, BIPOC, dealing with racial injustices this past year. That is quite a bit. I have had an influx of clients coming to my private practice trying to manage what's happening in society with the racial injustices. And so we have to think about that. What happened with her at the Olympics just wasn't something that started then. It was like, think about a Pepsi bottle being shook up. She's being shook up with trauma she's experienced, the racial injustices, the pressure from the media, pressure from herself, and whatever else she's dealing with that we don't know. There are some things she's dealing with privately that her announcing publicly that she wanted to focus on her mental health, we can only hypothesize what the specifics are, but what we know publicly, her Pepsi bottle exploded and she said, I needed to take a break. So when we come from a trauma-informed perspective, people need to be respected. They need to be connected. They need to be hopeful that they have support. We need to come from a collaborative approach with community, family, friends, faith-based organizations, human service organizations, and these sporting organizations. And we have to understand there is an interrelation between trauma and symptoms of depression or anxiety. Now, again, I cannot diagnose Simone Biles, but I can hypothesize what was going on in her Pepsi bottle that caused her to explode. So we really need to be, as a community, trauma informed and really providing this collaborative support, educating, increasing self-awareness, and increasing skills and techniques to be supportive and to give people the space and the place to talk about what they're dealing with as it relates to their mental health.
And on that note, a quote from Sister Biles clearly states, at the end of the day, we're human too. So we have to protect our mind and our body rather than just go out there and do what the world wants us to do. And so that is her way of showing her strength in pulling back to protect her mind and body. And I couldn't and won't attempt to articulate it any better than you did just now, Dr. T. So Brother Johnson, yes, I see you ready.
Yeah. So as I'm listening and I'm thinking, right? So when we say trauma, I think we got to start breaking that down more. Because a lot of time, especially in the Black community, right, and being a Black male, you're just taught to be tough and to get up and don't worry about things. But like, we got to start to understand what trauma is. Growing up, single parent home, that's something, right? You have an absentee going on, that's something. Being bullied, that's something. Watching your brothers do drugs, right? You maybe even experienced with drugs. Um, I think the percent is one out of like, I think it's like 1 out of 5 women. The way they deal with their first experience with sex is unwanted, whether that's a touch of the butt, whether that's a touch of like the breast. Like, trauma really has to get more defined, and we need to be more specific to talk about trauma. So we're not just saying trauma and people are like, well, I haven't dealt with anything. No, you have. You got to acknowledge it. But
Right.
to acknowledge it, you have to put things, you have to put titles on it. This is a trauma, that's a trauma, this is a trauma. And then we can start to talk about, like, how would that impact you later on in life? Because your 3 stages of trauma, there's the event itself, right? Then it's how to overcome that trauma. And then it's, what does this do for me moving forward? And all that stuff comes out. 95% of your brain is developed between 1 and 5, 90 to 95, right? So as a kid, you're experiencing a lot. And that stuff comes out later on in life. You know, me personally, I can speak to my own personal experience, not having a father in my life since I was 16. I'm 39, which really meant that I spent more time on this earth without a father than with a father. And for my teenage years, I had to figure out, how do I become a man? What does being a man look like? Because it's going to look totally different to me than it does to somebody that was raised by a father. I didn't have that. And so if that was an issue, right, let's spit it out. So now when I go date, how do I learn how to treat a woman? It's big. It's big. It's an ongoing. And so we got to understand we all have different traumas in our life. And so until we start to acknowledge what we have and not think that, oh, it's all right, it's a part of life. Because that's what people say. You know, my client's like, well, this is what everybody did, or everybody to go through this. Not everybody. And
Well,
it
that's
don't come out and manifest itself in the way it comes out in me or in you. It's going to come out in different ways. There's a certain thing called conversion disorder. What that means is your trauma can cause a part of your body to go kind of numb. Think about that if you're a swimming athlete, or if you ran track or played football. You could be so wrapped in your own trauma that your arm starts to get numb during the game or anything else. It's actually on a TV show, they started to they put it out there a little bit. It's called All American, which I thought was really great. That it was a football player high school, and during parts of the show, his arm would just go numb. And he was like, yo, I didn't know why my arm was going numb. And he had to go see a therapist. And through therapist, he discovered why. But if you never discover why, then he's just walking around with a numb arm. And that's people in our society right now who walks around with a numb arm or a numb leg because they have something in their mind that they can't fathom and talk about. There's a psychoeducation piece that really calls for you to take a deep dive into who you are, why you are the way you are.
so. How do we? Let me ask this to either or both of you. How do we define trauma without normalizing it when all we have are our lived experiences? And oftentimes our lived experiences, I'm going to say for a majority of Black people that I know and grew up with in the areas where I had experiences in, most of what we know is trauma, but if we acknowledged it as such, our normalcy would be a fallacy in essence. So how do you denormalize? How do you, rationalize irrational thoughts, patterns, and deeds in essence that we can say is trauma and get out of that state? Because as we know, your current state is not your permanent reality. But if you keep going back to that state, meaning the same house, the same environment, same public housing, or the same household for that matter, that is not normal because it is persistent with trauma. How do you not normalize that?
I can jump in and say a couple things, and I appreciate what Steve had said. And I'm going to get technical for a second, and let me give you the technical definition of trauma. Individual trauma results from an event or series of events or a set of circumstances that is experienced by the individual as physically or emotionally harmful or life-threatening, and that has lasting adverse effects on the individual's functioning and mental, physical, social, emotional, or spiritual well-being. And so people could have experienced traumatic events. We have these things called adverse childhood experiences, and could have experienced. But one of the things I want to make sure that I say, especially when it comes to Black and brown people, we are resilient. So people may have experienced trauma early on and have been resilient. But you have to understand, just like Steve said, that trauma can be manifested in your body physically. You still can be resilient, and then something later on in life could trigger that trauma to come to surface. So even this past year during the pandemic, I have had people that have experienced a resurgence of trauma as adults that they experienced as children, that they were resilient and were able to live effectively up until this past year during the pandemic. So I just think it's important to understand that people can be resilient from trauma. We really need to help people to understand that it can be manifested in your body. There's a term called psychosomatic. What's going on emotionally can show up in your body in terms of stomach aches, body aches, and pains. And sometimes people just ignore those things, or they go to the doctor, a medical doctor, their primary care physician, and they say there's no medical diagnosis, what's going on emotionally. And so that's a sign to open the door to say, I need to take care of my mental health. And remember, I said we all have mental health. There's a certain percentage of people, 1 in 5, that have a clinical diagnosis. But we all can have challenges to our mental health, and it can come from those traumatic experiences. But again, we can be resilient from those traumatic experiences.
And that resiliency, let's speak to that resiliency that it is almost expected of us, especially those of us who are living and normalizing trauma. That I equate that to having a broken bone. You can be resilient and still play through it. You can be resilient and not go get a cast. But once it quote unquote heals through that resiliency, it's not always what it started out to be. So your foot isn't straight, your ankle isn't straight. There's a bulging disc, there's a lump, there's something is still missing. And so it's a long way around again, highlighting our need as a community to be welcoming and not making things taboo, that we should acknowledge our young people and our elders and our middle, those of us on this call experience daily. Rather, to your point earlier, I almost didn't even talk about it, and just because we're resilient in dealing with it. But to your point, on top of everything else, Sister Biles and Richardson and others are dealing with, nobody has experience dealing with the pandemic. Which, you know, so yeah. So go ahead, Steve. Take off from here.
What I would say is you're both spot on. So essentially, Karl, me and you, we can have the same thing, right? And we can perceive it two different ways. So we can go through the same traumatic event, say the pandemic, right? For the pandemic, for you, the pandemic might be like stressful. But for me, I might be like, yeah, I'm cool. I got no problems. Right? It allowed me to practice self-care and really figure out how do we still help people if I can't meet you in the office. So we did two different things, the same event. And so trauma can be the same way, right? As we look to like try to find some normacy and or talk about the normacy part.
Yeah.
If we experience the same thing, but it has a lasting effect on my life and it has on yours, and I think that I've been able to be resilient and overcome, but maybe in your life, it causes you to be more physical or more aggressive, then that's something that's going to play a role. And I think in our community, especially in our community, we think about what I hear and what I see is like we look at going to therapy as like you got to be crazy. Like it really has to be something wrong with you to go seek help. But if we can start to understand that everybody needs a therapist. As a therapist, I talk to somebody because I need to talk to somebody. Right? It's not bad to have somebody in a neutral party to give you some advice. I have a wonderful mentor by the name of Wink. He don't even know it. He's like my therapist. If I got an idea about something, or I'm like, yo, how does this sound? I'm gonna turn to him, and he's going to help me, and we're gonna work through some things. But you got to have positive alliances within your community to really help you. Right? Even when you talk about like us, all professionals collaborate and come together, we got to understand our baggage, what we have with us that we bring to the table to support other people. Right. Because if not, the trauma that we have experienced personally is going to manifest itself in a professional meeting. That's where you see somebody get upset. That's where you see somebody lash out, right? Because they got things inside them like we all do. But you have to be able to go, this is my life. These are my experiences. Why am I always going left? Or why do I go left 6 out of 10 times? And when you can start to be honest with yourself and not just say, this is how I am. I always got an attitude. You know, I always get upset. I have a kid who be like, Mr. Steve, I got ODD. I don't got to listen. Man, if you don't sit down, if you can tell me you got ODD, I know you have the wherewithal to pay attention. Is that we tell you these things, and so now you got to live these things.
Yeah.
Right? So we got to be able to express what's going on, understand it, and then start to realize how we can cope with it in more respectful ways.
Yeah. You know, and I know we're experiencing some storms out where Dr. T is. So we're going to take a commercial break, put a pause in it for right now, take a commercial break. We'll try to get her back up to continue along this conversation. And for those viewers, we thank you for remaining here with us. We'll see you on the other side of this commercial. You are joined live here at A Seat at the Table, hosted by yours truly, Karl Singleton. I have licensed therapist, Mr. Steve Johnson, Harrisburg's own, because we recruited him, we adopted him. So he's definitely ours now. And of course, we're going to bring back our great sister, Dr. Tinsley, out of the Western Pennsylvania area. We'll see you on the other side of this commercial break. All right, welcome back. Thank you to our viewers for staying here with us as we work through a couple of technical glitches. I'm glad that you're still all right out there, Dr. T, with the storms passing through.
Absolutely. Can you hear me okay?
Fine, loud and clear. Thank you very much.
Way to make it. Way to make it.
Yes, indeed. So we all have faith and courage in that order. And that's where I want to transition a bit to during this part of the conversation with both of you are people of faith. And you're in a space where, you know, a lot of times when there's these diagnoses out there, oh, you know, well God will help me. I'll take there. How do you meet that? Where does that happy balance? And if I didn't know both of you to be, you know, in this space of faith, I wouldn't bring this topic up. But since I know both of you are, I think it addresses something in the Black community in particular. We'll get through it, by and by, and old, those spirituals, the old, but today is something different. It's right here. It's in our face, whatever it is. And that's why I'm saying, that's why I'm just going to still use the broad term of trauma, by his technical definition, as Dr. T put it earlier, because it encompasses it all. Uh, how do you interact? And Brother Johnson, you're doing it from a community-based perspective that I like you to highlight. And Dr. T, I know you do it in a plethora of ways. I like you to talk about the one-on-one, not in particular someone, but the one-on-one sessions that you're seeing through this pandemic and trying to not combat, but trying to convince individuals that it's okay to still be faithful and still understand what the diagnosis is in terms of the realism of here on earth, to cope, to deal with, to overcome, and not to simply normalize the trauma. So, um, whichever, Brother Johnson, we'll start with
Okay, I'll go first. Sorry, I was looking at Doc T. Um, Me and my wife have started a program called Swag, and swag is not your dress or your style. Swag is soldiers walking according to God. It's a spinoff from when I was growing up as a kid in Camden, New Jersey. We had a program called Urban Promise. And what that did was took inner city youth, not even it's at risk youth. So I wouldn't inner city focus on, but at risk youth. And it taught you about the Bible. And so you got to learn about the Bible, and it taught you about like mentors and role models and how to deal with stress and how to deal with anger management as a kid. Um, and so what I would say is when you're working with somebody, and I know when you're godly, you want to say, well, the Lord will help me. And yes, my first job is to acknowledge you and your religion, right? But it's also to try to teach you how to cope because you're experiencing some things that we need to help and we need to work with. And so he still can help you. You still can pray. You still can go to church. Your routine can be the same, right? But what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on your mental health and not your religion per se. So if you're Christian, if you're Muslim, if you're Baptist, it doesn't matter if my job is to try to get you to understand how your childhood and those, getting sexually assaulted, those domestic violence, house burning down, all those things have played a role in your life. And so um if I can do that and focus on that part, then I still can support you religion. And actually, we have a code of ethics that speaks all to it as a therapist. And we don't want to shun anybody's religion or say don't believe this or don't believe that. What you really want to do is you want to meet the person where they're at and start to help them understand themselves. Because if you're saying God's going to help me, God's going to help me, God's going to help me, He is. But how can you help you? How can I get you to be a support for you? Maybe we can get some people in your church to help you. And maybe those are people who can be a part of this process. Because as a lot of us know, we can't do it by ourselves.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I always say, as a man of faith, that prayer is a verb, it's action word. So do some action. Dr. T.
And I'll just pick up where Steve said, we can't do it by ourselves. And one of the things that I have done throughout Pennsylvania, so I live on the east side of the state right now, outside of Philadelphia. But for the past 20 years, I've been in Pittsburgh and working side by side with my pastor and father in the ministry, Dr. William H. Curtis. We really focused on bridging the gap between faith and mental health. And one of the things that we did was we started to educate him from the pulpit, me within the church educating on mental health issues in the church. And it really helps when it comes from the pastor in the pulpit. And we talked about what that looks like. We started a counseling center in the church at Mount Arrett. And we also found that there are other clinicians from other disciplines, whether it's licensed professional counselors, social workers, psychologists, who want to integrate the spiritual and Christian interventions within the counseling profession. We started this counseling center in 2009. And in 2009, up until this past year of the pandemic, we've really been pushing to educate pastors and clergy and faith-based leaders. When the pandemic hit, when there was lots of losses and grief and transitions, and I, in this past year, have been really consulting with many faith-based organizations, churches, and pastors to educate them on mental health. And one of the things I said to Pastor Curtis, boy, we are now really getting into the doors of the church. Do you think it was because of this pandemic, or now are people really open? I look at it as a crisis. A crisis could be dangerous, but it could be an opportunity for growth. And what I appreciate, regardless if it was the pandemic, I have worked with so many churches. My sister's a pastor. She brought me in to talk about, mental health and finishing unfinished business. Bishop John Guns has really been implementing this idea of bridging the gap between faith and mental health. So that comes from the larger perspective. But what happens is when I get referrals from pastors or churches and they're asking me, can you meet with this person? That then opens the door because they say, I can talk about God in the counseling session. Absolutely, because prayer will work. I'm a believer of prayer, but sometimes God will put a trained professional in front of you by answering your prayers, and it's somebody within the body of Christ as well. And so now we can weave in scriptures where they are in their faith development with what is going on with their mental health and what's going on with their wellness. And then I can educate them on diagnoses and I include them in the process. I just don't tell them. I want to provide the education, just like Steve said, the psychoeducation, to educate people on what's the criteria for major depressive disorder? What's the criteria for PTSD? Because I don't want them to not know what it is when we are working together in the counseling session. So I am weaving in skills and techniques that come from theology, that come from the biblical perspective, but also coming from the psychological perspective.
See there, I learned that from Dr. C. You see how I weave that faith and peace in there in this whole conversation? Start off with Simone Biles, Richardson. See how I did that? Go ahead, Brother Johnson.
I wanted, as she was talking, I said, hey, you know what? I'm a part of two wonderful separate entities that are church based. So one is Men's 33, and it's I don't want to say it's not churchy. I don't want to say do church. Like, so what it does, it tells you how God has a perfect design for you. And it teaches you things in reference to like your temper and how we want to be slow to anger. So you can start to use those type of terminologies when you start to talk about your mental health, right? Being slow to anger. If you're somebody that's quick to anger, let's talk about why you think we are quick to anger. Because that may be different for everybody. Have you always been quick to anger, or did an event happen? Mm-hmm. But you can take the verses that we go on in 33, and it is like wonderful in reference to like it helped me to be like a better person, a better man, like knowing how to walk in my faith and be the man that I want to be. It teaches you all of that, and it gives that, and it's an outline. And then we have brothers, that are in here that we hold each other accountable. We can talk to each other. We can call each other out. Like it's having a support network that really gives you the iron sharpens iron piece that you need, where like minds can come together and be strength based, but at the same time hold us accountable. I can call my male mentor and be like, "Hey, you said you were supposed to go to your wife and take her grocery shopping because you don't like grocery shopping, but you want to do that to honor her. Are you doing that?" And that's from my heart. That's from a genuine spot. It's not to look down on you or to come at you, but you have to feel that. You have to sense that. And 33 provides that atmosphere. And then the other thing we do, and it's for any religion, right? Any religion. And it's not, for this one or that. It's for any of us. Another thing that I'm a part of, me and my wife, we're part of a connect group that came out of Journey Church in Lancaster. That's facilitated by two wonderful people, Ann and Wink West. And they don't even know it, but they have given me so much from the Bible that I take with and I can turn it into a session for people who need it. It is just the Bible itself speaks about mental health in multiple ways. You just gotta be, and when I say you, I mean therapists, myself, Dr. T, anybody out there working with somebody, just mentors, anybody, right? You gotta be creative enough to see that verse and then go, let's look at it from a different perspective. When we say iron sharpens iron, who in your household sharpens you? Right. Who do you turn to in a moment of need? And it allows that person to start thinking about, like, do I have supports in place? Mm-hmm. Because as we start to think about our mental health, we want to think about, like, who can we put around our table? Who are the people that we can help to support us in time of need? Or in time of happiness, right? Who can I constantly be around to prevent me from getting angry?
Yeah, I agree with you on that note when you're talking about, and we were saying earlier about, a crisis or the pandemic or whatever. It either, you highlights a weakness that you can't overcome, or it strengthens you to the point where you do something beyond your wildest dreams. You're participating in something that was beyond a shift. This whole piece about the coming together to create Music Man Multimedia Studios for us to have this platform, because we couldn't get together in person, is a result of that type of thinking. So it's not going to tank, close up the doors, let's go away. Is what do we do differently now to make sure that we're just as and more successful? And I say we, because they brought me into the fold. They were already successful business owners and putting on, opportunities for us to get together in public spaces. And then, of course, what happened? That was gone. That was taken away. So what did we do? We adjust, accommodate, adapt like we do since we docked on these shores, and we make the best of it. Of our trauma, yeah, that was trauma. But look what that trauma of the pandemic has yielded at this time. It is now we're sitting here, live streaming StreamYard via StreamYard. Although your mentors, shout out to Mr. Rick Cole and Mr. Wink, you gave them the wrong link. They can't get in on this one. They got to go to Facebook. But we, we're here now. And so, Dr. T, what we're going to do before we start to wind down, because I know I promised both of you a certain time here, so I want to honor that, so that when I call you, you guys answer my phone calls, and I'll stick to my words. So, Dr. T, and I thank you, Brother Steve. I know he's on vacation and has a youth group out in Ohio, I believe. So
yes, sir. Tim Hardaway basketball camp starts tomorrow. We came out a day early.
There you go. So I'll let you start off with a closing, and then Dr. T. I'm glad I didn't announce you being in Pittsburgh. That my research showed you're closer to us now in Philadelphia, which we love. So we'll let you close out first, Brother Johnson, and then Dr. T. We'll move over to you.
I just want to start off by saying thank you to Karl and Dr. T for being on this platform and bringing such an essential topic that we need in our community to light. I think we need to continue to have these conversations, continue to talk about trauma so we can make trauma normal, right? Because right now people go, trauma, and I haven't been through nothing. But we all have been through something. It's okay to acknowledge who you are. In doing this, Karl was like, anything we can't talk about? I said, no, man. I'm an open book. I'm going to tell you about my shortcomings because I'm going to honor them. I'm going to honor and I'm going to tell you, yo, this is where I messed up at. This is where I messed up at. I messed up here. And then you know what? I got some stuff right too. And that's life, right? I'm not going to be perfect. You're not going to be perfect. But we got to own everything about us. As you own everything about us, then you can start to be strength based, which I really, really preach. And let's talk about what we do well. Let's talk about what we can do positively to impact yourself and others. The reason why trauma is so big is because it manifests itself because we can't speak about it. But if we can start to speak about it, then we can talk about all the other things in our life that we got to overcome it. One of my best questions is like, what are your weaknesses and what are your strengths? Because what I want to know is what are your strengths that you're using to overcome those weaknesses? Because we all have them, right? The more we can acknowledge them, the better things are going to be. Because then we can start to overcome. Yeah, this happened, but it didn't break me. It helped me. Yeah, we had the pandemic, but it didn't break us. The pandemic didn't break us. What it did was it gave us guidance to how we can help each other if we can't see you. How can I love you and still support you, although I'm here in Ohio? Carl, hey, see, you want to get on? Sure, he's in Harrisburg. Here's the link. Sound check this time. Let's do it. Okay, let me get on. Let me make sure I'm good. How can we support one another if we can't see each other? If we don't have the pandemic, do we figure that out? Or do I
Right.
go, oh man, I'm sorry, I'm in Ohio right now. I can't do it.
Right. That's heavy. You're spot on with that. So again, I thank you again for joining us from Ohio and taking time away from your business, your family, and the kids that you have out there at the Tim Hardaway camp. There's only one shortcoming that you admitted, but I figure you overcame it too. You said you were born in Jersey.
Camden, New Jersey, sir.
All right, shout out to Newark, New Jersey, where I was born. But you recovered because now you're here in Harrisburg, so you're good. So you're good with me.
Hey, hometown is where the heart is.
Oh God, Dr. T.
First and foremost, I just want to say thank you so much, Karl, for having me on the show, shining a light on a topic that needs to be brought more to the surface. I just really appreciate you devoting time to mental health and the athlete population. One of the things we were talking about with faith and mental health, since being on the east side of the state, I have since joined St. Paul's Baptist Church in Westchester, Pennsylvania. Our pastor, Dr. Wayne Croft, he is a phenomenal pastor. If you Google him or if you go to my Facebook page, Love and Basketball Ministries, you will find an interview with him where he shared at the Hampton Ministers Conference his challenges with mental health and how he had to take a break. And what I appreciate about Simone Biles, what I appreciate about Dr. Wayne Croft, you can be at the highest pinnacle of your career and still suffer from mental health challenges. And I think it's important for people to know mental health issues do not discriminate based on race, gender, religion, occupation, whether you're a pastor, whether you're an athlete, or someone who, just like me, works in private practice. Even a counselor needs a counselor. And so I just want to leave here saying I appreciate Simone Biles. I appreciate Dr. Wayne Croft for sharing their journey and modeling that it is okay to talk about it. It is okay to take care of self and take time away. Self-care is not selfish. And it is okay to say, I have mental health challenges and I am going to seek help, and let's strengthen the help seeking behaviors. So thank you again for shining a light on this topic, and thank you again for having me.
Definitely, but both of y'all are trying to get me in trouble, so I can't sign off without shouting out my pastor, Richard Hampton at Turner Memorial Missionary Baptist Church, the greatest church in the universe. Before we sign off, y'all trying to get me jammed up. Jeez. Well, so you trying to, at any rate, that was serious. But I thank both of you for joining us. And as I said before, as with other guests, this may be your first time, but certainly not be your last time. The table is always open and welcoming to you, your area of expertise. If there's a way that we can help you promote things that you're doing in the community throughout the Commonwealth and beyond, sign us up. we're here to help. We strongly believe in collaboration. The overall umbrella of the Diversity Coalition, which we belong to, is statewide, and so we have board members in the western side of the state, central part, as well as the eastern part of the state, as well as Delaware, and we're moving down into towards the DMV as well. So we are now here. Shout out to brother Rick Cole that's still there, and mentor Wink for joining us throughout the whole time. So again, a seat at the table hosted by yours truly could not be here, could not be before all of our viewers and listeners without the control room, the Lewis brothers, and of course Chad Scott. So we thank those gentlemen for always making sure that things are tight, in place, and ready for our individuals that are our supporters that are out there. So until next time, I thank the guests and I thank all of our viewers and those that will see us in a delayed form via YouTube. So signing off for this time. We'll see you again Monday at 6.